It's November 13th, 1863, a Friday the 13th. In South Texas, something terrible is about to happen. In the small town of San Patricio, an old woman stands beneath a hanging tree. She is 63 years old. She is about to die today. The crime she's accused of? Murder. But the evidence against her is weak. The jury begged the judge for mercy. He refused to listen. Her last words are spoken in Spanish. No soy culpable. It means, I am not guilty. In 122 years, Texas will agree. This is the story of Chipita Rodriguez, the woman Texas wrongfully executed on Friday the 13th. Let me tell you what really happened. To understand her story, we need to go back to 1829. That year, Irish settlers founded a colony in the Texas frontier region. They called it San Patricio de Hibernia, named after St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. It was a Catholic settlement in wild Texas. The town sat at a crucial crossroads, where the old Camino Real met the Nueces River. Travelers passed through here constantly, going west. By 1863, America was torn apart by civil war. The Union Navy had blockaded all southern ports along the Gulf of Mexico. But Texas found another way to survive. They smuggled cotton through Mexico on a route called the Cotton Road. It ran through San Patricio. Wagon trains loaded with cotton passed through day and night. Outlaws preyed on travelers. It was a lawless and dangerous time to be alive. This is where Chipita Rodriguez lived. She was born on December 30th, 1799, in what was then Spanish colonial Texas. Everyone called her Chipita. She lived alone in a small shack called a jacal, right beside the Nueces River on the edge of town by the road. She made her living the only way she could. For a quarter, travelers could get a hot meal and a place to sleep on her wooden porch. Her father, Pedro, had been killed fighting in the Texas Revolution decades earlier. She had no family left. She was completely alone in this world. Well, almost alone. She had a helper named Juan Silvera. Some historians believe he was actually her illegitimate son from many years before. For years, this was Chipita's simple life, cooking meals, hosting travelers, surviving on the Texas frontier, until August of 1863. That month, everything changed. A stranger rode into San Patricio. His name was John Savage. He was a cotton trader and a horse dealer by trade. Savage had just completed a big sale. He was carrying $600 in gold coins. In 1863, that was a small fortune indeed. That night at the local saloon, Savage made a dangerous mistake. He drank too much whiskey, and then he started bragging loudly to everyone. He told the whole saloon that he had just sold horses to the Union Army. In Confederate Texas, supporting the North could get you killed fast. But Savage didn't seem worried about the danger. After drinking, he rode out to Chipita's jacal by the river. He wanted a meal and a bed. Chipita prepared him a hot supper. Savage paid his quarter and laid down his bedroll on her porch. It would be the last night of his life. What happened that night remains a mystery to this day. Someone entered Chipita's property. Someone picked up an axe. Someone committed murder. 2 days later, servants from a nearby ranch were gathering firewood along the riverbank. They spotted something strange floating in the water. It was a burlap sack. Heavy, lumpy, they pulled it to shore and opened it. Inside was John Savage's body. His skull had been split by an axe. Sheriff William Means was called to investigate the gruesome scene. He examined the body and the area carefully. Then he made a quick decision. But here's the detail that would haunt this case for 122 years. The detail that suggests everything about this case was wrong. The $600 in gold that Savage was carrying, it was found with his body, still there. Every single coin accounted for in the sack. Think about that for a moment. If this was a robbery gone wrong, why was the money still there? It makes no sense at all if robbery was motive. But Sheriff Means didn't care about logic. He already had his suspect picked out. He rode straight to Chipita's jail and arrested her that day. He also arrested Juan Silvera. The evidence against them? Savage had stayed at her place, and there was blood found on her wooden front porch. Chipita had an explanation for the blood. She butchered chickens there for her cooking. An axe was found at her home. She used it for firewood. But in 1863 Texas, being Mexican was practically evidence of guilt by itself. The prejudice against her was obvious from the start. The trial began on October 9, 1863. Judge Benjamin Neal presided over the case. From the very beginning, everything was wrong. There was no proper jury list in the county. Sheriff Means simply grabbed men off the street to serve. Some had criminal records of their own. At least 3 men who served on the grand jury that indicted her also sat on the trial jury that convicted her. A clear conflict of interest. The sheriff who arrested Chipita was also the foreman of the grand jury. He was essentially acting as judge, jury, and prosecutor all at once. Chipita had almost no real defense. Her court-appointed lawyer barely spoke during the trial. He made no objections. He called almost no witnesses. And Chipita herself? Throughout the entire trial, she remained almost completely silent. She spoke only 2 words in her own defense: not guilty. Some historians believe she stayed silent to protect Juan Silvera. If he was truly her son, she may have been willing to die to save his life. Others suggest she was gathering intelligence during the Civil War and was framed as a political act. The truth died with her beneath that tree. The jury deliberated on her fate. Then they did something unusual. They found her guilty of first-degree murder. But they also wrote a letter. The letter read, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chipita Rodriguez guilty of murder in the first degree, but we recommend mercy for these reasons." Quote, "On account of her old age and the circumstantial evidence against her, we do recommend her to the mercy of the court." End quote from jury. Even the jury knew something was deeply wrong with this case. They saw the weak evidence. They begged the judge to spare this old woman's life. Judge Benjamin Neal read their recommendation for mercy. Then he ignored it completely. He looked at Chipita Rodriguez and pronounced her sentence: death by hanging. Juan Silvera received only 5 years in prison for his alleged role. But Chipita, the frail old woman, would hang until dead. For weeks after sentencing, Chipita waited for her execution. She wasn't kept in a jail cell. She was held at Sheriff Means' own home in town. Twice during her imprisonment, angry mobs gathered outside. They tried to break in and lynch her themselves before the official execution date. But not everyone in San Patricio wanted her dead. Some showed her small kindnesses during her final weeks. Local children visited her often there. They brought her candy and corn shucks so she could roll cigarettes. These small comforts from children were her only solace before death came. One neighbor named Kate McCumber refused to cooperate with the execution. When the hangman came to borrow her wagon, she drove him away forcefully. But these small acts of defiance couldn't save Chipita Rodriguez. November 13th arrived, a Friday. Friday the 13th, 1863. That morning, Chipita was led from the sheriff's house to a grove of trees along the Nueces River. The hanging tree had already been selected. She was placed on a cart for the journey to her death. But this was no ordinary cart. She rode sitting on top of her own wooden coffin that day. An old man watched the procession pass by. He shook his head sadly and said, "It's a black day for San Patricio. A black day indeed for all of us." At the hanging tree, Chipita was helped down from the cart. The noose was placed around her thin, wrinkled neck. The crowd watched in silence now. She was asked if she had any final words to say before she died. Chipita Rodriguez looked at the crowd. Then she spoke in her native Spanish tongue. "No soy culpable." The words hung in the November air. "I am not guilty." These would be the last words Chipita Rodriguez ever spoke on this earth. The cart was pulled away from beneath her feet, but Chipita was old and frail. Her body was too light. Her neck did not snap cleanly from the fall. Instead, she slowly strangled to death over several agonizing minutes. The crowd watched in horror as she struggled and then finally went still forever. When it was over, her body was cut down from the tree. She was placed in her coffin. There was no funeral, no ceremony at all for this woman. She was buried right there in an unmarked grave beneath the hanging tree. No headstone, no marker, just dirt covering a woman who died claiming innocence. But something strange happened immediately after they lowered her coffin into the ground. Something that would spark a legend lasting over a century. At least one witness at the burial claimed they heard a sound coming from inside Chipita's coffin after it was placed in the earth. A low moan. Was she still alive when they buried her? Did they bury an innocent woman while she still breathed? Or was it something else entirely that they heard? The rumors started spreading through San Patricio immediately. People whispered that Chipita's spirit could not rest, that she would return for justice. And according to the people of San Patricio, she did return. The ghost of Chipita Rodriguez has been seen along the Nueces River ever since then. Since the 1930s, residents have reported seeing a woman in white drifting through the mesquite trees near where she was hanged that day. The apparition always appears the same way, a spectral figure floating silently, and around her neck, a noose still hangs, even in death after all years. Locals say you can hear her wailing from the riverbanks on quiet nights, a mournful cry echoing through the South Texas brush and across the water. Some believe she only appears when a woman is about to be unjustly accused of a crime. Her ghost rises as a warning that injustice is being done. Others say she walks whenever any great wrong is about to occur. Chipita's spirit serves as a reminder of what happens when justice fails the innocent. Today, you can visit the old San Patricio Museum. Inside, there's an entire exhibit dedicated to Chipita Rodriguez and the events of that dark day. The museum includes a recreation of her execution scene. It's a somber reminder of the injustice that occurred here over 160 years ago now. Here's a strange detail that many visitors notice. The museum's address is on Highway 666. The number of the beast in Christian tradition today, is it just a coincidence? The locals aren't so sure. Some say the devil's number marking Chipita's memorial is fitting for such a hellish miscarriage. For over a century after her death, Chipita Rodriguez remained officially guilty in the eyes of Texas law. Her conviction was never overturned at all. Writers and poets kept her story alive. Rachel Blunser Hebert wrote an epic poem called Shadows on the Nueces. Others wrote books and articles too. In 1993, the University of Texas performed an opera about her life and death. Her story became part of Texas folklore and legend. But officially and legally, she was still a convicted murderer. The state had never acknowledged that anything was wrong with her trial or execution. Then, in 1985, a state senator from Corpus Christi decided it was finally time to right this ancient wrong after so many long years. His name was Carlos Truan. He believed Chipita deserved justice, even if it came 122 years too late. He filed a resolution today. Senate Concurrent Resolution 14 asked the Texas legislature to officially acknowledge what everyone already knew deep down about this tragic case, that Josefa Chipita Rodriguez did not receive a fair trial, that she was convicted on circumstantial evidence, that justice had failed her completely. The 69th Texas legislature debated the resolution. They reviewed the evidence from 1863. They examined the trial's many flaws. On June 13, 1985, exactly 122 years after her execution, the Texas legislature passed the resolution finally. Governor Mark White signed it into law. Texas officially acknowledged that Chipita Rodriguez had not received a fair trial. She was symbolically absolved. It wasn't a full pardon or a declaration of innocence, but it was an admission that the state had failed her, that she probably died for nothing. Finally, after more than a century, Chipita's last words were officially believed by the state. No soy culpable, I am not guilty. Texas finally agreed. But even now, so many questions remain unanswered about that night in August 1863. We may never know the full truth of what happened. Did Chipita stay silent during her trial to protect Juan Silvera? Was he really her son? Did he actually commit the murder while she took the blame? Was she framed because she was Mexican in an Anglo and Irish community? Did prejudice and racism seal her fate more than any actual evidence ever did? Who really killed John Savage that night? Was it someone from the saloon who heard him bragging about selling horses to the Union Army forces there? Was it random violence on the lawless Cotton Road? Or was there some other motive we've never discovered hidden in the lost records of history now? We may never know the answers to these questions. The court records were destroyed in a courthouse fire. Only fragments of the truth remain today. But we know this much for certain. An innocent woman died beneath a Texas hanging tree on Friday the 13th, 1863. That is fact. Her last words were, "No soy culpable. I am not guilty." And 122 years later, the state of Texas finally admitted she was right all along. If you want to hear more forgotten stories from American history, subscribe to this channel now. And if you visited San Patricio, did you see Chipita?